We are soon to enter the last Shabbos of the year, the last Shabbos in Tavshin Pei, Parshas Nitzavim Vayelech. I want to share with you a story that we've discussed a couple of times, but it's always good to Chazar. Now, there was a very famous Rav, Talmud Chacham, Dayan. His name was Rav Shapsi Cohen. He wrote a sefer called the Sifsei Kohen, the Shach, known as the Shach. He was a Dayan in Vilna at age 20, a massive, massive Talmud Chacham, tremendous individual. And he had, I don't know if it was a business dealing or if it was a loan, there was some monetary dispute that arose between the Shach, the Dayan in Vilna, and one of the Balabatim in Vilna. And the Balabas said, they both said, so let's go to a Dayan, let's go to a Bezdin. The Balabas said, we can't go to a Bezdin in Vilna. I can't go. It's not going to be fair. You're the Shach, you're the big Rav. I don't feel that I'm going to get a fair trial if we go to a Bezdin in Vilna. Let's go to a Bezdin a few kilometers out of the town. Back then they didn't have the same media that we have today, so you go a mile, 2, 3, 4, 10 miles away, no one's going to know who the Shach was. No one's going to recognize the Shach. No one saw him. They went to a dwarfel a few kilometers away where there was a Chochma Rav. Chochma Rav was the Rav of that town. Didn't know what the Shach looked like. And they both go into this Rav. And they say, we have a dispute. Could you please adjudicate for us? Sure, not a problem. And each one said their side. And the Rav said, okay, come back in X amount of time. Let me think about it. Let me look into it. And I'll issue my ruling. They come back. And there's this Rav. He said that the halacha follows this balabas. The balabas is correct. And he wins the din Torah. Okay? So the Shach knew of a Gemara in Bava Kama. That's how I heard the story, a Gemara in Bava Kama. That according to this Gemara in Bava Kama, the Shach wins. So this Rav said, you're right. According to the simple understanding of that Gemara in Bava Kama, you should be winning. But a new sefer just came out on the Shulchan Aruch called the Sifsei Kohen, written by Rav Shapsi Cohen. Maybe you heard of him. He says to the Shach himself, unaware that it was the Shach. And he says that he has 7 kashas, or some number of kashas on the sugya. And he says a mahalach, an approach to explain those kashas. And based on his approach, he has a new understanding of the Gemara. And according to his understanding, you lose the case. And the Shach thought to himself and said, Negias. The Shach, when it was relevant to him, when it became negayah to him that he was going to lose the din Torah, he forgot his chiddush. He saw the Gemara in Bava Kama that the simple understanding is he wins. Now, in order to make sure that he wins, he subconsciously forgot about his chiddush that he himself wrote in the Shach. And he understood the Gemara in a way that's going to favor him. And this Rav had to remind him, hold on a second, the Shach. And again, the Rav didn't know that he was talking to the Shach himself. He didn't know this was a Shabbos Yikon. So the Shach said, oy, Negiyas. He saw how stark, how strong a Negiya is. What does Negiya mean in English? A bias. A person has biases. So he was biased to himself. He realized he was biased. And therefore he forgot his chiddush. What connection does this have to Parshas Nitzavim? Zok, the pasuk in the end of Nitzavim, Perek Lamed pasuk Yud. Ki sishma b'kol Hashem elekecha. When you listen to Hashem, Hashem's voice, lishmor mitzvoisav, chukroisav, to follow his mitzvahs and his chukim, haksuva b'sefer Torah hazeh, that are written in the Sefer Torah. When are you going to listen to what Hashem says, which is written in the Sefer Torah? When is that going to happen? Says the pasuk, Ki sashuv el Hashem elekecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha. When you return to Hashem with all your heart and all your nefesh. You're going to understand the Torah when you return. What does that mean? Why can't I understand the Torah before I return? Why when I return? So the Heilige Meshech Chochma on this pasuk says as follows: "The mishamabit b'Torah b'shvirus liboy." If a person approaches the Torah with his heart's desires, he is going to understand the Torah in a different way than what the truth is. Because his desire is going to guide his heart. It's going to turn his heart. It's going to make his heart lean towards one direction. To uproot the word of Hashem, because he has a desire to the halacha should be a certain way. So his desire is going to uproot Hashem's ratzon. It's going to uproot the emes, the truth. And it'll cause him subconsciously. I'm not talking about a person who's intentionally going to see the wrong thing in the Torah, but subconsciously, the person is going to explain the Torah to fit into his own agenda. Therefore it says, you'll be able to follow the Torah when you return back to Hashem with your entire heart. Without any bias. It's no desire other than the truth. Then you will understand well that which it says in the Torah. It says the Meshech Chochma v'karav lazeh pirish the Ebenezer. The Ebenezer has a similar mahalach. It's a chashuv yisoid that the Meshech Chochma is teaching us, that we can't take ourselves and all our understandings, all our assumptions, and approach the Torah. We must approach the Torah with a blank mind. One of my rabbis used to always say that the Torah, more often than not, has something else to say than you think. He used to always tell us that what the average Yid thinks something is, it's always something else. The Torah always has something else, a different angle. It's always the opposite of what a person would think with his muscle vision. Because we're malay taivas, we're full of different agendas. I'll tell you another story. This I heard from my father-in-law, Zichron Levracha, Rabbi Yeshua Zev Abramov, Zichron Levracha. He was learning in a yeshiva that had a very well-known Rosh Yeshiva, a big posek, one of the Gedolei Ador, and there was a machlokes between two bachrim on a certain inyan. My father-in-law never told us what the inyan was, what the machlokes was, but there was a machlokes. And they both wanted to ask the Rosh Yeshiva, but they didn't trust each other. The way my shver used to say it was, one of them was a right-winger, one was a left-winger. That was his sprach, that's how he said it. And they didn't trust each other that they're going to understand the Rosh Yeshiva and say it over correctly. I mean, each one thought that, I can't trust this guy, he has his agenda. So they brought my shver with them. He was a straight shooter, no agendas, just the emes. They brought my shver with them into the Rosh Yeshiva to get his chavas das, to know what he felt, what he thought. And they went in, and they asked the shaila, and they went out, they came out, and like they both suspected, the right winger said, he said like me, and the left winger said, he said like me. So Yavu HaKasav HaShlishi, my father-in-law came, and he said, in this case, he happened to have said like the right winger. That's what he said. Again, he never told us what the issue was, but it's a bias. If a person goes into asking the shaila in a certain way, with a certain agenda, he's going to touch up, he's going to understand what the Rebbe is saying to fit his agenda. So we've pinpointed the problem, and even the Heilige Shach, right, has struggled with this. He's a human being, on his level, obviously. So what do we do? So the answer for this, in order to try to eliminate bias, the way one does that is to seek counsel with others. Most of us so full of negias. We have to ask someone else, but not someone who's meshubet us. You can't ask your employee, am I a good employer? You can't ask that. You have to can't ask that person. You have to ask someone who doesn't mind telling you that you're making a big mistake. You're so foolish. You know what you're doing. You're ruining your life. You're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. You have to ask the person who will tell you the truth, even though it might hurt. Often a spouse is very good at that. But a friend, It's got to be someone that is not meshubit to you. Someone that's not, dependent on you. Someone who will tell you the way it is. But that's the only way to do it. Very high people, the Shach himself could do it on his own. But most of us need to have someone else to try to help us uncover any biases that we have. As we head now towards Rosh Hashanah, Tavshin Pei Aleph, the Yom Neroim, and it's been a very tumultuous year. And we hope that we're going to come to this Rosh Hashanah, we're going to use our experiences over this past year to motivate us to do further introspection, to do a more sincere tshuva as last year. It's crucial, it's imperative that we uncover our biases. And we ask someone, honestly tell me, where do you think I can improve? Now, it might be a painful experience, but ask people that are close to you. Someone who's not gonna, someone who'll be honest. Where do you think I need to improve? And you might not be surprised, and you might be surprised. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe said the following ma'aseh, and we'll end with this. He said that imagine a person is walking by a room, and he hears two people talking in that room. One, Ruvain is his enemy, and Shimon is his friend. And Ruvain, his enemy, is saying, this guy Shmerel, and he's a Rasha, and he's stingy, and he's mean, and he doesn't respect Gedolim. And Mamish, this Ruvain, this enemy of Shmerel, is bashmutzing him, and he's making fun of him, and all the chesroinus. And Shimon, his friend, is saying, no, you don't understand. He didn't mean it like that. I don't think that's true. His friend is defending him, and his enemy is pointing out all the lackings that he has. What is a Ben Torah? What is a Torah Diki Yid? How does he react to that conversation when he opens the door and he walks into the room and he says, I hear what you're saying? What does he say? He says, Ruvain, I'm much worse than you think I am. Everything you're saying is true, if it's true. And there's a lot more than that. We have to be man enough. We have to be a gibor enough to confront our lackings. And maybe this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling us. It's definitely what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling us. That we have to confront our lackings and do and perform true and sincere tshuva. My bracha to all of us is that we take this lesson of the Meshech Chochma. Ki sishrim b'kol Hashem l'kecha. When is that? Ki sashiv el Hashem l'kecha. We can only follow the Torah when we return to the Torah, we take out our bias, and we understand the emes, and we implement it in our lives. Wishing everyone a good Shabbos, a Shana Tova Mesuka, a Ksiva Chasima Tova, a good Gebench to you.